Thank the organization for allowing me to speak. I'm very excited to be here today. I have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to be speaking quickly. If anybody has any questions, I'll be providing my email at the end. You can always email me, and I'll be happy to stick around to answer questions. So today's topic, my talk today is going to be longevity in the era of telemedicine. Just real quick, just an introduction to me. My name is Dr. Zalzala, Dr. Z for short. A lot of people call me Dr. Z. I'm a physician located in the United States. I've gotten a lot of experience with various different telemedicine companies. I'm one of probably only a dozen physicians or so that are licensed in all 50 states. For those who are not familiar with the medical system in the States, each medical board, each state has its own medical board, and you need to be licensed in each of those medical boards in order to provide care for patients in those states. So today, just a real quick outline of what I want to talk about in the next 30 minutes. Some introductions on telemedicine, types, advantages, disadvantages, a little bit of regulation. Talk a little bit about how the pandemic has affected clinical trial. And then, introduction to the field of longevity and what we're doing at AgelessRx. So what is telemedicine? Hang on, let me move this out of the way. I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is bothering me. All right, so telemedicine is basically any care, any medical care or health care, any form of healthcare or medical care that's not done face-to-face with the doctor and the patient in the same room. So basically, whenever you're not in the same room, it's considered to be telemedicine. The history of telemedicine is thought to go back, 500 BCs when they were using smoke signals. Of course, flash forward to the 1900s, talking about the telegraph, telephone, civilian uses, military uses as well. The idea of modern telemedicine, I guess the first report we could find is 1924. This radio news kind of envisioned this doctor in a box kind of scenario, or doctor in a radio box, with the doctor and the television and the patient on his bed being monitored by the doctor. And of course, like a lot of new technology, it's taken up by the military first, usually, for better or worse. And so you have NASA getting into telemedicine and also providing healthcare to rural areas. And then technology has just kind of gone leaps and bounds since then. Now there are many types of ways that telemedicine is being used. Patient education, medical imaging. And then, fast forward to 2019, 2020, where the pandemic accelerated the use of telemedicine. You had a lot of states here in the United States that went on what's called a state order lockdown or a stay-at-home order. This is a few months old, but this is all coming back again now that COVID's spiking again in the United States and across the world. Prior to the pandemic, only about 18% of physicians were using telemedicine. That's in 2018. Now it's pretty much every physician that I've spoken to that I know of has used telemedicine in some form or another. So the adoption rate is almost at 100%. Some physicians have actually retired because they just haven't been able to keep up with it, or they're just not comfortable or familiar with the technology, or sometimes their practice are just not adaptable easily to telemedicine. But the demand has surged as of like May of 2020. A company called PlushCare is up by 70%. Amwell is up by 160% almost. And then the American Medical Association, because in response to the pandemic and every medical provider needing to jump aboard it to provide access to their patient during a pandemic, the American Medical Association has come out with all sorts of regulations and guidelines. The insurance coverage, such as Medicare and Medicaid, have also started changing regulations a little bit. I'm just going to briefly talk about the types of telemedicine. I kind of break it down to different categories. So you have synchronous versus store and forward, or asynchronous, and then you have acute care versus disease specific. Synchronous telemedicine is what most people think about when they think about telemedicine. Picking up the phone or doing a Zoom chat or some other kind of video chat with a health provider or physician on the other side. There are definitely benefits to that. But there's also some drawbacks, matching supply with demand, server internet issue, bandwidth issues. Some companies who kind of allow physicians to expand their practice using synchronous. And then store and forward, that's kind of taken off quite a bit in the last few years. Basically, anytime there's no real-time communication between the doctor and the physician, that's considered to be asynchronous or store and forward. Emails, text messages, EMR portals. Even if you record a video or an audio and you send it to a patient and they record it and send it back, since it's not real time, that's considered to be store and forward. Of course, there's upsides and downsides to that as well. And then because you're actually storing something, it makes patient safety, security a little bit more complicated. And then even between store and forward, there's, practitioner, let's say you're a GP and, you send your images to a dermatology, dermatologist to review for you. That's kind of store and forward there. And then of course there's direct to patient or patient to practitioner, photos, labs, intakes, etc. And then acute care, a lot of hospitals have started using telemedicine for acute care. Specifically like rural hospitals or hospitals that may just not have access to certain specialists. The nurses can pull around a computer on wheels, and the patient can speak to a specialist, anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world, really. And then direct to patient acute care telemedicine usually is for things like respiratory conditions, urinary tract infections, pink eye, mild to moderate minor urgent care issues that usually don't require full examination, lab work, things like that. You'll see, in the United States, the big company is called Teladoc. Ammo is kind of close behind it. And there's been a whole host of other companies that have cropped up. And then more recently, we've seen the emergence of disease-specific telemedicine. Basically, online clinics focusing on very specific, very narrow focused telemedicine. Like for example, Verta Health is diabetes, Brightside is for mental anxiety, depression, birth control with the Pill Club, and of course, AgelessRx, we're focused on longevity. There's a lot of advantages and disadvantages of telemedicine. Some of the advantages, convenience in terms of cost, wait time. You don't have to drive or take time off of work to go see a clinic or a doctor. If implemented properly, you could, potentially do a better, quality and consistency of care. It's thought to augment revenue for providers. And an advantage and a disadvantage of telemedicine is up until recently, it's mostly operated outside of insurance. And a lot of physicians feel or use it to enhance face-to-face healthcare rather than to substitute it. A little bit more about the advantages. I mean, cost, turnaround time, no geographic barrier. Potentially improve quality of care with, fewer hospital admissions, readmissions, augments the revenue for providers. Anytime you deal with insurance, you deal with a lot of paperwork. And so if you're dealing outside of the insurance system, less paperwork. A lot of times it's direct payment rather than waiting for a third party to pay you. And then it's not limited to patients within a certain geographic certain provider plan. So you don't have to match up the patient with the provider in terms of credentialing for insurance and contracting with insurance and things like that. Again, enhances face-to-face healthcare. Sometimes people might go a year or more without seeing their primary care physician. And then in between, potentially physicians can use telemedicine to check up on their patients. You know, improves provider satisfaction. Like I said, providers feel like they're more engaged with patients if used properly. Of course, there's a lot of disadvantages. Modality, you know, being impersonal, security issues, technological barriers. You know, obviously you can't do an injection, a biopsy. You can't do any kind of procedures by telemedicine. You know, you can't auscultate, palpate, you know, or any of that by telemedicine. Although there are some increasing tools that allow physicians to do that now. Obviously, collecting vitals can prove difficult. Again, there are, you know, connected devices and things like that that make that easier. But I still feel like they're awkward to use. Can be perceived impersonal. This is more of a generational issue. You know, some populations may perceive it as impersonal and just not, you know, not what they're used to. Others, like the millennial generation, younger generation, they're perfectly fine with it. In fact, a lot of them seem to prefer telemedicine over that one-on-one relationship with a physician. Again, operating outside of the insurance can be a big disadvantage. You know, here in the United States, you know, insurance reimbursement is a big thing, and you know, a lot of patients are just not willing to pay out of pocket for certain things. But like I said, it's kind of a double-edged sword. There's a security issue in terms of, you know, keeping everything secure, HIPAA compliance, you know, or similar laws, you know, in Canada or Europe and other countries. Regulatory landscape, again, like I mentioned earlier in my talk, typically the physician or the nurse practitioner has to be licensed where the patient's located. I tell patients it's kind of like when you get a speeding ticket. It doesn't matter where you're driving, starting out driving or ending up driving. It's where the police happens to pull you over at the time of the speeding ticket. That's where you fall under the jurisdiction. So same type of thing. So the patient is covered under the jurisdiction of wherever they happen to be at that time. So that's why the physician needs to be licensed, or there has to be some other kind of agreement in place from state to state. But it does change frequently. You know, in the United States, we have this thing that's been developing for the last several years called the Interstate Medical Licensing Compact. And of course, during the pandemic, a lot of states have provided emergency licenses to providers in order to, you know, to make it easier for out-of-state physicians to start seeing patients. And then changes. I mean, a lot of the rules and regulations from medical boards were never really designed to handle the type of telemedicine that we see today. And so, you know, there always seems to be something new. You need to almost have a law degree, and or you need to hire lawyers in order to keep with all the regulations. Sometimes it can be unclear. Again, states are updating old laws. You know, various different countries are also updating their laws. All right, let's switch gears to clinical trials. I'm talking about, like, in general clinical trials, and I'll talk about what we're doing at AgelessRx towards the end. So when most people think about clinical trials, they think of in-person centralized. You know, you have a hospital or you have a drug company that has, you know, various different sites, and usually they rely on physicians and populations within a certain geographic area to draw on. You know, larger studies can have multiple sites, but most smaller studies just have one or two sites. And so that can really make it limited in their geographic reach. You know, patients have to drive far, they have to take time off of their work or their schedule to come participate. You have these large buildings, staff, things like that. But of course, it does make it easier to manage adverse effects, adverse reactions when they do happen. But as we've seen, prone to pandemics, I think I read a study that almost all non-COVID related clinical trials were affected one way or the other by the pandemic. A lot of them either shut down, stopped enrolling, you know, suspended. All sorts of problems are happening in the clinical trials realm because of the pandemic. Before the pandemic, there was this push for decentralized virtual clinical trials, and of course, just like telemedicine, I mean, this has also been accelerated. by the pandemic. You know, the advantage is no geographic boundaries. You know, you can enroll from wherever you have clinicians that are licensed to oversee it. Lower overhead because basically your staff is all pretty much remote. But of course, it limits the types of therapies and limits the type of monitoring. You can't do a biopsy, for example, remotely. You know, you can't experiment on an infusion or an injection. But it does tend to be more pandemic resistant, as we've been seeing, because you can distribute, you know, the drug, for example, or the whatever various therapy. All right, so let's switch gear here a little bit. So, you know, Albert Gray, he's pretty well known in the longevity field. He's quoted as saying, "There's no difference between saving lives and extending lives, because in both cases we are giving people the chance of more life." So as a physician, you know, we're always taught to save, to save lives, and with extending lives kind of being secondary almost. But you know, I like this quote quite a bit. So what is longevity? I think we've spoken about it at this conference quite a bit, but it's not about how many candles you have on your cake. You know, it's not what your calendar tells you how old you are. It's how you feel. You know, what's the point of living to be 100, 120 when the last, you know, 20, 30 years of your life, you're essentially non-functional. So the idea of longevity is not only living longer, but living healthier and getting more. My passion as a physician is looking for the root cause of diseases, and I discovered that premature aging is the ultimate root cause of pretty much all chronic diseases. With, of course, exceptions. And then what's available today? You have conventional anti-aging therapies versus what I would call longevity therapies. You know, when somebody talks about anti-aging, for example, they think of, you know, cosmetics, Botox fillers, things like that. Hold on just a second here. Hold on. Hold on. Sorry, there was a chat message. I was just making sure it wasn't for me. So people think of, you know, Botox, hormone replacement, you know, sexual health, you know, and stem cells have become pretty big recently. And then there's longevity. So, I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with anti-aging. It's just when people think of anti-aging, like I said, they think of more these more cosmetic lifestyle type, as opposed to longevity, like we talked about before. You know, more life, more health, and you know, there's a lot of therapies that are being discovered all the time. You know, we have some already. Like we think metformin is a fairly potent medication that'll help you live longer and healthier, you know, improving NAD levels, you know, looking at the mTOR modulators, senolytics, and there are a lot more that are being, I think we're just in the beginning. Brick and mortar versus online clinic. This is very similar to the virtual versus the in-person clinical trials. So I'm going to just kind of browse through this really quickly. All right, so let's jump gear to where my my life has been for the last little over a year. I launched AgelessRx, what was formerly known as Qualitude. Quali being quality adjusted life here. We changed the name a few months ago to be a little bit more patient friendly. AgelessRx just had a little bit better ring to it. When we launched, we actually were fortunate enough to be picked up by CNBC. We got a lot of press coverage that way. We try to be as science-based as possible. Like for example, metformin was the first therapy we offered for patients who wanted to live longer and healthier and were not diabetic. So we are using it off-label. You know, metformin is known to activate many anti-aging pathways. You know, IGF-1. You know, there's too much science here to go through it all. But if you are interested, you could you know, visit our science page, AgelessRx.com, and look for our science page. And we're always adding new studies as they come out here. Now, currently we're a telemedicine company. So, you know, patients are coming to us and they're looking for metformin or NAD replacement. And we have physicians that are prescribing them for patients who are looking for it that way. but we are increasingly getting into clinical trials. I'll talk a little bit about that. And we also are looking to build almost like a database and a platform for patients to be able to get personalized data analysis and recommendations. And the hope is that they'll feed into each other. So, you know, we do clinical trials on new therapies, for example, rapamycin. You know, to understand rapamycin a little bit better. It's not very well understood yet for human use in terms of longevity. And then we kind of couple that with kind of monitoring for patients. And then the idea is to offer it under our telemedicine platform. And then we just kind of keep doing it over and over again. And with the data platform, the idea is that, you know, we'll be able to gain new insights on what's needed for individual patients. Because right now, a lot of the data we have is based on large populations, but we need more insights on how individuals will respond and what types of therapies they need. So again, it's kind of hopefully it's a feed forward cycle that will continue to move the longevity field forward. So on AgelessRx, you know, like I said, currently we offer a few therapies, and we're adding to this all the time as we find different ways to offer various different therapies. Like I said, research is another thing that we're doing. And then I talked a little about the data analysis and the recommendation, you know, using various different biomarkers. And that includes anything from the epigenetic markers that we hear a lot about, you know, the so-called Horvath clocks, you know, wearable data, and then at some point we want to be able to kind of analyze all that using some type of algorithm, you know, and learn valuable insights that'll help us move the field forward. Clinical trials, we have a lot of ambitions. Our top priority right now is to study rapamycin as a longevity therapy. It is being used, very limited among some of the anti-aging doctors out there, but the problem is we don't even know what dose is safe or effective for humans for longevity. And so that's what we're trying to look at for rapamycin. Of course, everybody's gotten on the COVID bandwagon, and we're looking to see if some of our therapies will help both acute and chronic COVID. And of course, you know, validating biomarkers, you know, looking at new products or new ways of using products. For example, you know, glutathione can be administered using what's called an iontopatch, iontophoresis. It works really well based on the data that we've gotten. And then combination therapy. You know, we're not going to be able to find. There's not going to be one drug or one therapy out there that's going to help with longevity. I'm fairly certain it has to be a multi-therapy, multimodal approach. And right now, nobody's really looking at the multimodal. A lot of people are just kind of looking at this molecule or that intervention or that intervention. You know, we're hoping to eventually be able to kind of look at them in various different combinations, see which ones are synergistic and which ones are not synergistic, and potentially antagonistic. And of course, you know, we want to be able to start collecting data for longitudinal trials to see, you know, how well these therapies can work over the long term. We just don't know right now. So I mentioned the rapamycin trial. We call it PEARL, Participatory Evaluation of Aging with Rapamycin for Longevity. It's an IRB approved protocol. It'll be the largest of its kind when it comes to rapamycin intervention for longevity. We're going to be looking at 4 different dosing regimens plus a placebo. We'll be looking at both safety and efficacy using various different markers that we talked about before. And the idea is once we kind of know what dose seems to be the best, then we'll, you know, the best in terms of safety profile and efficacy, then we'll kind of roll out that particular dose, that one, or maybe it's 2 doses, I don't know, but we'll hope to pick one of those doses and then roll it out to a larger patient. So there'll be about 75 people in each group, plus 75 in the placebo. And then, you know, once we kind of figure out which of the dosing regimens work best, we can expand that to 1,000 patients and continue the study on for a longer period of time, and then start looking at combinations. You know, how well does metformin work with rapamycin? How well does NAD work with rapamycin? I was just reading a study yesterday that one of the reasons why rapamycin seems to work is because it increases the NAD to NADH ratios, I believe. So what happens if you augment NAD? And the question was who's funding our studies? So currently we're actually doing a crowdfunding. So it'll be partially crowdfunding. It'll also be patient participation funding. We're trying to offset the cost as much as possible for the patient. So if you go to AgelessRx/Pearl, there's an L missing there, I think got cut off. So if you go to AgelessRx, you look at our research, you go to Pearl, we'll be launching a crowdfunding campaign. We do have private donors that have been generous with us, but we are looking for more. And of course, AgelessRx will also be chipping in for the funding as well. The idea, we're not looking to patent, rapamycin as a drug, but the idea is just to move the longevity field forward, so we can actually provide rapamycin as a treatment on our platform. And this kind of gets into the paradigm shift of kind of clinical trials, and when it comes to researching new therapies. I mean, the old model, the old paradigm is single molecule focused, very expensive. Only 1 out of 5,000 molecules actually get approved. Only 5 out of the 5,000 actually enter any kind of preclinical testing. And of course, at the end of the day, because of all this expense and risk and things like that, new drugs tend to be very expensive. Our new model, we're looking at repurposed medication, metformin, rapamycin, etc. There are other candidates as well. The idea is that we could do these trials in a fairly short amount of time and collect valuable data from it. We're almost democratizing, empowering the citizen scientists to become involved. And then, like I said, our focus not on single molecules, but eventually combinations. This will allow us to build the infrastructure that we need in order to start looking at more therapies, more repurposed drugs, more, anything and everything out there related to longevity that we could possibly look at. For those who are interested in helping, if you want to be a participant or if you want to, donate, research at AgelessRx, or like I said, you can go to AgelessRx.com. Just real quick about our company, we have over 1,400 active subscribers for metformin and other products. We're pretty strong growth. We raised a little bit of funding a few months ago, and we're looking to raise a little bit more sometime around the middle of 2021. And we're looking for partners. So anybody who has any kind of therapeutic I think that's promising from a therapeutic standpoint, from a testing standpoint, from a technology standpoint, funding, research, development. We can't do this alone. Nobody can do this alone. It's a huge undertaking. We're going to need partners for this. So if anybody's interested, partnerships at AgelessRx.com. And if anybody has any questions for me, my